This is ROG's fastest all-AMD gaming PC, and for good reason, because it's packing a serious CPU and GPU combo here. What we've got is the new ROG G700, and a couple months ago we took a look at the Intel version. I wasn't sure if they were going to create an all-AMD variant, but here it is. And I'll tell you, I've been really impressed by the performance. Now, of course, we've got a lot of RGB because first and foremost, this is a gaming PC. We've got an 8-core 16-thread X3D CPU, and that's cooled by a 240mm AIO. When it comes to graphics, this is powered by AMD's new RDNA 4 architecture, and at least at the time I'm making this video, this is a pretty high-end Radeon GPU. And we've got 16 gigs of VRAM. We'll get into the full specs in just a bit, but there was one thing I didn't like about the overall build itself. Now, there was nothing loose, everything was in place, it was pretty clean, and it booted right up. But if you take a look real close here, where the power comes from the power supply to the GPU, it's a bit messy, as you can see. It's got an 850-watt gold power supply, but it's a non-modular power supply. So there's not much that can be done here unless, they use some extension cables, which I don't think they're going to do with the pre-built, or go with a fully modular power supply with this setup. It's just a little gripe I had. It doesn't hurt performance whatsoever, but it would have been nice to have these routed a bit differently. When it comes to the overall specs, like I mentioned, this is an all AMD setup here. So we've got the AMD Ryzen 9800X3D. I mean, this is an absolute beast of a gaming CPU. 96 megabytes of L3 cache and 8 megabytes of L2 cache. 8 cores, 16 threads, clocks up to 5.2 gigahertz out of the box. You can do some overclocking if you wanted to, but I'm going to leave it stock for all of the testing here. This PC came with 32 gigabytes of RAM pre-installed, just running in dual channel at 6,000 megatransfers per second, but you can go up to 64 with this setup. For the GPU, we've got the AMD Radeon 9070 XT with 16 gigs of VRAM. So yeah, I do expect we're going to see some really good performance out of this. The motherboard is an ASUS Prime B650. We've got a 2TB M.2 2280 NVMe SSD. It's a PCIe 4.0 drive. Wi-Fi 6, plus we've got onboard Bluetooth, 850-watt gold power supply, and it's running Windows 11. The first thing I wanted to jump into were some benchmarks that I ran on this system. Geekbench 6, single core, 3,305 on this 9800X3D. I mean, that's a phenomenal single core score. Multi could do a bit better with this chip with a little bit of tuning. We're at 17,877, and it's not a slouch, but I have seen the 9800X3D do a bit better than this. So yeah, if we went into the BIOS, did a bit of tweaking, we could get this on up there. But the way it is right now, not too bad for this synthetic. I also ran Cinebench R24, and for that single core, we got a 134. And just to give you an idea, the last G700 that I tested had the Intel Core 7 265K, coming in with a little higher single core at 146. When it comes to multi-core, on that 9800X3D, we're right there at 1,348, and that Ultra 7 265K just has more cores to work with, up to a 2,046. Moving over to some GPU benchmarks with 3D Mark, Steel Nomad, total score 7,219, and we managed a 72.20 FPS with this test. I also ran Time Spy, and this is a really great score, coming in with a 26,333, and our graphics score a little over 30,000 with that 9070 XT. So this thing is pushing out some really good synthetic performance. But now I want to jump into some real-world gaming, and the first one we have here is Red Dead Redemption 2. Now, I wanted to show this off because I ran the built-in benchmark, and I actually went back a couple times just to make sure it was set correctly. I'm at Ultra settings, so the slider is at Ultra. We've got mainly everything set up. I'm not using any kind of FSR or frame generation with this game. And if you've ever tried to benchmark this game or just play it in general, you know these settings can be a bit finicky. So I went back 3 different times, restarted the game just to make sure we were at Ultra because it really seemed like the FPS was way higher than it should be. But through all of my benchmarks, I mean, it kind of looked the same here. Minimum of 60, maximum of 253, and an average FPS at 1440p Ultra, 160 FPS. This was some really awesome performance for Red Dead 2. The next one I wanted to test was Doom: The Dark Ages, 1440p Ultra Nightmare with no FSR, and I'm also not using path tracing. That was disabled. So at Ultra Nightmare settings, I mean, we're getting over 100 FPS. With some FSR, we can get much more out of it, but I wanted to see what it would do at that native 1440, and I could play it like this all day long. Marble Rivals is another one that I always like to test. We're at 1440p Ultra with no FSR, and by the end of this run here, we had an average of 152 FPS. This is one of those games that I would just kind of like to lock down at 120, 1440, and have a good time with it. Or if you want to get way up there, you can take it down to 1080. Now, unfortunately, with these same settings here with no FSR, it's not going to hit 240, but enabling FSR and taking it to balanced will get us to that 240 mark at 1080. God of War Ragnarok, just a very well optimized game, 1440p Ultra, no FSR, over 130 FPS on average, and during battle you can see we're right there at 130 up to 140. When you're just kind of wandering around, it does hit around 150. And of course, I had to test out Forza Horizon 5. I knew that we were going to see amazing performance out of this. 4K Extreme with no FSR, over 170 FPS on average. This is way more than enough for me. I mean, it's way more than enough for basically anybody out there. And finally, we've got Cyberpunk 2077 at 1440 Ultra with FSR 4 set to native AA. So we're actually not doing any kind of scaling with it, at least resolution scaling. It's just handling that aliasing, and it's really not that bad. By the end of this run, we had an average of 90 FPS with this, and I wanted to see how ray tracing worked on this system. And as we know, I mean, when it comes to ray tracing, NVIDIA does have AMD beat, but it doesn't mean we can't use it with a little bit of scaling. So we're going to head into the settings, and we're going to take ray tracing to Ultra. So right now we're at 1440, native AA with FSR 4, Ultra settings. We're going to go to ray tracing Ultra. And I'm sure we will need a little bit of FSR. So we've got 2.1, 3, and 4 to choose from. I'm going to go to 4. We're just going to set it to auto. So now with ray tracing set to Ultra, with FSR 4 set to auto at 1440p, let's see what this thing does. Give it a few seconds, and wow, that's way better than I thought. I figured we'd be around the same where we were before, using some FSR. And with FSR 4 set to auto, it's kind of hard to tell exactly how far it's scaling down. It's probably going to around balanced. It could even be going to performance. I'm not exactly sure, but it still looks good like this. And it looks like we're getting over 100 FPS on average with ray tracing set to Ultra on the 9070 XT. Of course, we've got a little bit of resolution scaling going, but that's just kind of how it is. There's just no way around it. I mean, NVIDIA just beats AMD when it comes to ray tracing. The last thing I wanted to talk about here were CPU and GPU temps with this setup. So through my testing, side panel is on. We're using the stock fan curves. And by the way, from Armory Crate, I mean, we can go up to like turbo mode and that'll just boost the fans up a bit. I left it just like it was. And when it comes to the average CPU temps on that 9800X3D, remember, it's got that 240mm AIO. For 1440p gaming, we averaged only 56 degrees Celsius, and the maximum recorded was 73. And we hit that 73 degrees Celsius while running Cinebench R24, so that's a pretty extreme test there. Now when it comes to the GPU temps, I didn't think we'd have an issue with this Prime RX 9070 XT. 1440p gaming, average 58, maximum recorded was only 66. So yeah, I'm really digging the performance that we're getting out of this all AMD G700 from ROG, and I'd love to install SteamOS on this. I've been doing a little bit of testing, and unfortunately, when it comes to official SteamOS, I just can't get it to boot at the time I'm making this video. I've been messing around with it. Now, Bazite will run, and since we've got an all AMD system with these kind of specs, we're going to see some outstanding performance when it comes to Linux gaming on this system here. And if you're interested in seeing Bazite run on this, let me know in the comments below. I would love to get official SteamOS up on this thing, but like I mentioned, I just can't get it booting right now. Either way, as a Windows machine, if you're looking for a pre-built all AMD setup, this is definitely one to think about. If you're interested in learning a little more, I will leave links to their official website in the description below. And if there's anything else that you want to see running on this, just let me know in the comments. But that's going to wrap it up for our first look. And like always, thanks for watching.